The fluorescent lights of Walmart hummed overhead like a tired orchestra, casting their harsh glow on endless aisles of merchandise. It was 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon in Massapequa, Long Island, the kind of quiet hour when the store felt almost empty, save for a few scattered shoppers pushing their carts with the mechanical rhythm of routine. Billy Joel pulled his baseball cap lower over his eyes as he navigated through the electronics section. At 75, he had learned to appreciate these mundane moments of anonymity. The simple act of buying batteries and light bulbs had become a small rebellion against the spotlight that had defined so much of his life. He moved slowly, deliberately, his weathered hands examining a package of AA batteries as if they held the secrets of the universe. That's when he heard it, a sound that cut through the store's ambient noise like a blade through silk. Sobbing. Not the frustrated tears of a child denied candy, but the deep, wrenching cries of someone whose world had just collapsed. Billy turned toward the sound, his musician's ear drawn to the raw emotion like a moth to flame. 3 aisles over, in the children's clothing section, he could see a small figure hunched over a shopping cart. The crying continued, punctuated by gasping breaths that spoke of exhaustion and desperation. He set down the batteries and walked toward the sound, his footsteps soft on the polished floor. As he rounded the corner of aisle 12, he saw her, a little girl, perhaps 7 years old, with tangled brown hair that caught the harsh store lighting like burnished copper. She wore a faded pink dress that had seen better days, and her small shoulders shook with each sob. The child stood beside a nearly empty shopping cart that contained only the bare essentials: a loaf of white bread, a jar of peanut butter, a gallon of milk, and a small container of generic macaroni and cheese. In her trembling hands, she clutched a crumpled $20 bill and what appeared to be a handwritten shopping list. Billy approached slowly, the way one might approach a wounded animal. "Hey there," he said softly, crouching down to her eye level. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" The girl looked up, her tear-stained face revealing eyes the color of storm clouds. For a moment, she seemed startled by his presence, but there was something in Billy's weathered face, perhaps the kindness earned through decades of joy and sorrow, that made her shoulders relax slightly. I can't afford the medicine," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the store's ambient noise. "Mama needs her medicine, but it costs $37, and I only have 20. She held up the crumpled bill as if it were evidence of her failure. Billy felt something shift inside his chest, a familiar ache that reminded him of his own childhood struggles in the Bronx, when every dollar stretched thin and dreams seemed as distant as the stars. He glanced around the store, noting the absence of any adult who might be with this child. "Where's your mama, honey?" he asked gently. "She's in the car," the girl replied, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "She sent me in because she can't walk very good today. Her legs hurt real bad when it rains, and it's been raining for 3 days." The child's voice carried the matter-of-fact tone of someone far too young to bear such responsibilities. Billy stood slowly, his knees protesting the movement. At 75, he understood the weight of physical pain in a way he hadn't at 30. "What kind of medicine does she need?" The girl reached into her small pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. With careful precision, she unfolded it and showed him a prescription bottle label that had been carefully cut from an empty container. The medication name was barely legible, but Billy could make out enough to know it was for arthritis. Expensive arthritis medication that insurance often refused to cover fully. "My name's Emma," the girl said, as if proper introductions might somehow solve her problem. "Emma Rodriguez. Mama always says to tell people your name so they know you're a real person and not just a problem." The wisdom of this simple statement hit Billy like a piano falling from a great height. How many times in his life had people reduced him to just a problem to be managed, a celebrity to be handled, rather than seeing him as Bill, the kid from Hicksville who just happened to write songs that people liked? "That's a beautiful name, Emma," Billy replied. "My name is Bill Joel." He watched her face carefully, but there was no recognition in those storm-gray eyes. To Emma Rodriguez, he was simply a stranger in a Walmart who had stopped to ask if she was okay. "Mr. Bill," Emma said, her voice gaining a touch of strength, "do you know if they have a payment plan for medicine, like when Mama buys our couch and we pay a little bit every month?" The question broke Billy's heart in the most beautiful way possible. Here was a 7-year-old child trying to negotiate a payment plan for her mother's medication with the earnestness of a seasoned businesswoman. The resilience in her voice spoke of countless similar conversations, countless small battles fought and won or lost in the marketplace of necessity. "I don't think the pharmacy works quite like that, sweetheart," Billy said carefully. "But tell me, how did you get here? Did you walk?" Emma shook her head. "No, sir. Mama drove us in the old Honda. It makes funny noises, but it still goes. She's waiting in the parking lot because the walking makes her legs worse." The child paused, seeming to consider something. "She doesn't know I don't have enough money. I told her I could handle it because I'm good with numbers. I am good with numbers," she added defensively, as if Billy might doubt her mathematical abilities. "I'm sure you are," Billy assured her. "You counted exactly right. The medicine costs $37 and you have $20. That means you need $17 more. Emma nodded solemnly. "Yes, sir. $17 more." She said it like she was stating the distance to the moon, a fact that was accurate, but utterly beyond her reach. Billy looked down at this remarkable child who carried herself with a dignity that most adults never achieved. Emma Rodriguez, 7 years old, standing in a Walmart with $20 and the weight of her mother's pain on her small shoulders, represented something that Billy had spent a lifetime trying to capture in his music. The quiet heroism of ordinary people facing extraordinary challenges. "Emma," he said, making a decision that felt as natural as breathing, "I think I might be able to help you with those $17. The child's eyes widened, but instead of immediate gratitude, her face showed something more complex. Hope warring with skepticism, the look of someone who had learned not to trust too easily. "Why would you do that, Mr. Bill? You don't even know us." It was a fair question, and one that deserved a thoughtful answer. Billy found himself thinking about the countless times strangers had shown him kindness throughout his career. The piano tuner in Cleveland who had stayed late to help him before a show. The waitress in Philadelphia who had slipped him an extra piece of pie when she noticed he looked tired. The janitor in Chicago who had quietly fixed a broken string on his piano between sets. All of these people had helped him not because he was Billy Joel, but because help was needed and they had the ability to provide it. "Well, Emma," Billy said, "sometimes grown-ups help each other out. That's just what people do. And right now, you're doing a very grown-up thing by taking care of your mama. That tells me you're the kind of person worth helping." Emma considered this explanation with the seriousness of a judge weighing evidence. Finally, she nodded. "Mama always says that kindness is like a boomerang. It comes back to you. But she also says we shouldn't take charity because we're not charity cases. We're just people having a hard time right now." The distinction was important, Billy realized. Charity implied pity, a handout to the less fortunate, but mutual aid between human beings, that was something different entirely. That was community. That was what made the world bearable. "Your mama sounds like a very wise woman," Billy said. "And she's right. You're not a charity case. You're a person having a hard time, and I'm a person who happens to be having a good day. Sometimes when those two things meet, something nice can happen." Emma seemed to weigh this philosophy against whatever internal compass her mother had instilled in her. After a long moment, she nodded again. "Okay, Mr. Bill, but I want to pay you back. I don't know how yet, but I will." "I believe you will," Billy replied, and he meant it. There was something in Emma's bearing that suggested she would remember this debt long after he had forgotten about the $17. They walked together toward the pharmacy section of the store, Emma pushing her small cart with the determination of someone 3 times her age. As they moved through the aisles, Billy found himself noticing details he might have missed in his hurry to complete his own errands. The careful way Emma avoided displays that might be knocked over, how she automatically moved to the right to let other shoppers pass, the quiet "excuse me" she offered when they needed to navigate around an elderly man examining vitamins. This child had been raised with manners, with consideration for others, with a sense of responsibility that was both admirable and heartbreaking. How many 7-year-olds were shopping alone for their family's necessities? How many were making impossible calculations about medication costs while their peers worried about playground politics? At the pharmacy counter, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and graying hair looked up from her computer terminal. Her name tag read Susan, and she had the worn but warm expression of someone who had spent years helping people navigate the complex intersection of health and economics. "Can I help you folks?" Susan asked, her voice carrying the professional cheerfulness of retail work. Emma stepped forward and carefully placed the prescription label on the counter. "Excuse me, ma'am. I need to buy this medicine for my mama, but I need to know exactly how much it costs because I have to budget carefully." Susan examined the label and typed something into her computer. Billy watched the pharmacist's face change slightly as the price appeared on her screen, a subtle tightening around her eyes that suggested she had delivered this kind of news many times before. "The medication will be $37.18, Susan said gently, "with tax." Emma's face fell slightly at the mention of tax, a detail she hadn't accounted for in her careful calculations. Billy could see her mind working, trying to figure out how to explain to her mother that she had failed to consider this additional cost. 18 cents more, Emma whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. "I didn't think about tax." Billy stepped forward and placed a gentle hand on Emma's shoulder. "Don't worry about it, sweetheart. I've got the $17 we talked about, plus the extra 18 cents for tax." Susan looked between the elderly man and the young girl, her expression softening with understanding. She had witnessed countless similar scenes over the years, families stretching dollars, strangers helping strangers, the quiet dramas of people trying to take care of each other in a system that often felt designed to prevent exactly that. "It'll take me about 15 minutes to fill the prescription," Susan said. "Would you like to wait here or come back?" "We'll wait," Billy replied, speaking for both of them. He had nowhere urgent to be, and something told him that Emma might have more to say once the immediate crisis was resolved. They found seats in the small waiting area near the pharmacy, Emma still clutching her $20 bill and Billy watching her with growing curiosity. There was something about this child that went beyond her obvious resilience and maturity. She carried herself with a quiet grace that reminded him of the best musicians he had known, people who understood that true strength came not from forcing your will on the world, but from finding harmony with it. "Mr. Bill," Emma said, after they had sat in comfortable silence for several minutes, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart. Are you married? Do you have children?" The question was innocent enough, but it touched on complicated territory in Billy's life. His relationships, his marriages, his struggles with fatherhood, all of it felt too complex to explain to a 7-year-old. But Emma had shared her vulnerability with him, and she deserved honesty in return. "I was married," he said carefully, "a few times actually, and I have a daughter who's all grown up now. Her name is Alexa Ray." "That's a pretty name," Emma replied. "Is she nice?" Billy smiled at the simple directness of the question. Adults always asked about success, about achievements, about public recognition. Only a child would cut straight to the heart of what really mattered, whether someone was nice. "Yes," Billy said, "she's very nice and talented. She's a musician like me." "You're a musician?" Emma's eyes lit up with interest. "What kind of music do you play?" "Piano mostly, and I write songs." "Real songs? Like on the radio?" Billy chuckled. "Some of them have been on the radio, yes." Emma nodded approvingly. "Mama loves music. She sings sometimes when she thinks I'm not listening. She has a beautiful voice, but she says she never had the chance to do anything with it." The child paused, seeming to consider something. "Maybe that's why God sent you to help us today, because you understand about music." The casual mention of divine intervention made Billy pause. He had spent much of his adult life wrestling with questions of faith, purpose, and meaning. But here was a 7-year-old who saw the hand of providence in a chance encounter at Walmart, who believed that the universe operated according to some kind of cosmic justice that connected musicians across generations and circumstances. "Maybe," Billy agreed quietly. "Tell me about your mama's singing." Emma's face brightened in a way that transformed her entirely. The worry lines that had seemed so incongruous on such a young face smoothed away, replaced by the pure joy of a child sharing something she loved. "She sings when she's cooking," Emma said, "and when she's folding laundry, and sometimes late at night when her legs hurt and she can't sleep. She doesn't know I hear her, but I do. She sings old songs she says her mama used to sing to her when she was little. Songs about love and loss and hope." Billy felt a familiar stirring in his chest, the same feeling he got when he encountered a melody that demanded to be written down, a story that insisted on being told. "What kind of songs?" "Sad ones mostly, but beautiful sad, not scary sad, like..." Emma paused, searching for the right words. "Like when you cry at a movie, but you're glad you watched it anyway." The description was so perfect, so precisely capturing the essence of bittersweet art, that Billy wondered if Emma had inherited her mother's musical sensibilities. There was poetry in the way this child spoke, a natural understanding of emotional complexity that usually took decades to develop. "Does your mama know any of my songs?" Billy asked, curious. Emma shrugged. "I don't know." "What are they called?" Before Billy could answer, Susan, the pharmacist, called Emma's name. The prescription was ready. They walked back to the counter where Susan had prepared a small white bag containing the medication that would ease Emma's mother's pain. $37.18, Susan repeated, her voice gentle. Emma placed her $20 bill on the counter with ceremonial precision. Billy reached into his wallet and added a 20 of his own, receiving change that he immediately handed to Emma. "Your change, sweetheart," he said. Emma looked at the money in her palm, $2.82, with wonder. "I get to keep this?" "That's how change works," Billy smiled. "You gave the right amount, so the extra is yours." But instead of pocketing the money, Emma walked over to a small display near the pharmacy counter where greeting cards were arranged. She studied them carefully, finally selecting a simple card that read, "Thank you," in elegant script. It cost exactly $2. She brought the card to Susan, who rang it up and gave Emma 82 cents in change. Then Emma walked back to Billy and held out the card. "This is for you," she said, "for being kind to strangers." Billy accepted the card with hands that trembled slightly. When had someone last given him a gift that was purely about gratitude, with no expectation of reciprocity or networking opportunity? He opened the card and found that Emma had somehow managed to write a message in the brief moments while Susan was processing the transaction. In careful, round handwriting, she had written, "Dear Mr. Bill, thank you for helping Mama and me. You have a good heart. I hope someone is kind to you when you need it. Your friend, Emma Rodriguez. P.S. I will pay you back someday." Billy stared at the card for a long moment, feeling something shift inside his chest, like tectonic plates finding a new position. This wasn't just gratitude, it was recognition. Emma had seen him not as a celebrity or a source of charity, but as a fellow human being deserving of kindness in return. "Emma," he said, his voice rougher than usual, "this is one of the most beautiful gifts anyone has ever given me." The child beamed with pride. "Mama always says thank you notes are important. She says when someone helps you, you should make sure they know it mattered." They walked together toward the store's exit, Emma clutching the white pharmacy bag like it contained the most precious treasure imaginable. As they pushed through the automatic doors, Billy felt the humid Long Island air wash over them, carrying the scent of recent rain and new possibilities. "Which car is your mama's?" Billy asked. Emma pointed to a beat-up Honda Civic parked near the back of the lot, its faded blue paint telling stories of years spent ferrying a small family through the challenges of everyday life. Billy could see a figure in the driver's seat, a woman with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, her head tilted back against the headrest in a posture that spoke of exhaustion. As they approached the car, Billy got his first clear look at Emma's mother. She was younger than he had expected, perhaps in her early 30s, with the kind of tired beauty that comes from years of putting everyone else's needs first. When she saw Emma approaching with a stranger, she immediately sat up straighter, her body language shifting into protective mode. Emma knocked on the passenger side window, and her mother rolled it down with manual effort. The car was old enough that electric windows were a luxury it didn't possess. "Mama," Emma said, her voice bright with success, "this is Mr. Bill. He helped me with the medicine money." The woman's eyes moved from Emma to Billy, and he could see her processing multiple emotions at once: gratitude, wariness, pride, and embarrassment. Her face was lovely despite the lines of worry around her eyes, and when she spoke, her voice carried a slight accent that suggested Spanish was her first language. "I'm Carmen Rodriguez," she said, extending a hand through the window. "Emma, what do you mean he helped with the medicine money?" Billy stepped forward and took Carmen's hand, noting the calluses that spoke of physical labor and the slight tremor that might have been from pain or nervousness. "Your daughter is remarkable, Mrs. Rodriguez. She handled everything like a professional, but she was a little short on the total cost. I was happy to help cover the difference." Carmen's eyes moved between Billy and Emma, clearly trying to piece together exactly what had transpired in the store. "Emma, how much were you short?" $17.18, Emma replied with mathematical precision. "Plus, I forgot about tax, but Mr. Bill helped with that too." Billy watched Carmen's face cycle through several expressions: surprise that Emma had been that close to having enough money, embarrassment at needing help, and something that might have been anger at herself for not having given Emma more cash. "I had $20, Carmen said quietly, and Billy understood that she was explaining not just the financial situation, but the impossible choices that $20 represented. It should have been enough. The medicine was $35 last time. "Prices change," Billy said gently, "and your daughter handled the situation with more grace and dignity than most adults would have managed. You should be very proud of her." Carmen's eyes filled with tears that she quickly blinked away. "I am proud of her. Carmen's voice caught slightly. "She's had to grow up too fast." The admission hung in the humid air between them, carrying the weight of single motherhood, financial struggle, and the daily choices between pride and necessity. Billy understood that Carmen was not just talking about this one trip to Walmart, but about 1,000 small moments when Emma had shouldered responsibilities that should have belonged to adults. "We all do what we have to do," Billy said. "And it sounds like you're raising an extraordinary young woman." Emma climbed into the passenger seat of the Honda, carefully placing the pharmacy bag on her lap like it was made of spun glass. "Mama, Mr. Bill is a musician. He writes songs that go on the radio." Carmen's eyebrows rose slightly. "Really? What kind of music?" Before Billy could answer, Emma piped up again. "I told him you sing, Mama. I told him you have a beautiful voice but never had the chance to do anything with it." Billy saw Carmen's cheeks flush with embarrassment. "Emma, you shouldn't bother strangers with—" "She wasn't bothering me," Billy interrupted gently. "I'm always interested in meeting other musicians. Music is, well, it's how we connect with each other, isn't it? It's how we share the things that are too big for regular words." Carmen studied Billy's face with new interest. "What did you say your last name was?" "Joel. Billy Joel." For a moment, Carmen's face was blank. Then recognition dawned like sunrise, her eyes widening as she processed the information. "Billy Joel? The piano man? Billy Joel?" Billy nodded. suddenly feeling self-conscious. Carmen stared at him for a long moment, then began to laugh, not mockingly, but with the kind of amazement that comes from discovering that the universe has a sense of humor. "Emma," she said, turning to her daughter, "do you know who this is?" Emma shook her head, looking between her mother and Billy with curiosity. "This is Billy Joel. He sings Piano Man and Uptown Girl and We Didn't Start the Fire. I used to play his music when I was cleaning houses, back when I could work more hours." Carmen turned back to Billy, her expression mixing wonder with embarrassment. "I can't believe... thank you doesn't seem like enough." "It's plenty," Billy assured her. "Really." But Carmen was shaking her head. "No, you don't understand. Your music, it got me through some really hard times. When Emma's father left, when I was working 3 jobs and still couldn't make ends meet, when the arthritis got so bad I had to quit cleaning houses, I would put on your songs and remember that other people had struggles too, and they survived them." Billy felt that familiar ache in his chest, the one that came whenever someone told him how his music had mattered in their life. It never got old, that moment of connection. But it also never got easier to accept the responsibility that came with it. "Which songs?" he asked. "Piano Man, obviously. But also, the longest time when I was missing Emma's father, even though he didn't deserve it. Vienna, when I felt like I was running out of time to make something of myself. And Innocent Man." Carmen's voice trailed off, and Billy could see her deciding whether to share something deeper. "Innocent Man reminded me that good people exist," she finished quietly. "When it felt like the whole world was designed to punish people like me and Emma, that song reminded me that not everyone was trying to hurt us." The confession hung between them like a bridge neither had expected to build. Billy found himself thinking about the thousands of people who had told him similar stories over the years, how his music had been the soundtrack to their struggles, their hopes, their small victories and devastating losses. But somehow, sitting in a Walmart parking lot, talking to Carmen and Emma Rodriguez, it felt more real than it had in decades. "Mrs. Rodriguez," Billy said, "would you mind if I asked you to sing something?" Carmen's eyes widened in alarm. "Oh no, I couldn't. I don't perform. I just sing around the house." "The best musicians often do," Billy replied. "Some of the most beautiful music I've ever heard came from people who never thought of themselves as singers." Emma bounced slightly in her seat. "Mama, sing the one about the sparrow. You know, the one Abuela used to sing." Carmen looked trapped between her daughter's enthusiasm and her own self-consciousness. "Emma, Mr. Joel doesn't want to hear..." "Actually, I really do," Billy said honestly. "I'm always looking for new songs, new stories, and Emma says you sing beautifully." After a long moment of internal debate, Carmen took a deep breath. When she began to sing, her voice was soft at first, uncertain, but it quickly gained strength and clarity. The song was in Spanish, a traditional melody that spoke of longing and loss and the endurance of hope. Her voice had a quality that recording engineers spent fortunes trying to capture, an authenticity that came from lived experience, a richness that could only be earned through real pain and real joy. Billy closed his eyes and listened, letting the melody wash over him. Carmen's voice was untrained but intuitive, finding the emotional center of each phrase, with the instinct of someone who understood that music was about communication, not performance. She sang like someone who had been raised on lullabies and folk songs, who had learned music as a language before she learned it as an art form. When the song ended, the parking lot felt different somehow, as if Carmen's voice had transformed the mundane space into something sacred. Billy opened his eyes to find both women watching him anxiously. "That was extraordinary," he said, and meant it completely. "Your voice has something that can't be taught, Mrs. Rodriguez. It has truth." Carmen's cheeks flushed with pleasure and embarrassment. "It's just something my mother used to sing. I don't even know who wrote it." "That's folk music," Billy explained. "Songs that belong to everyone and no one. They're passed down through families, changed a little bit by each person who sings them, until they become something new while staying something old. He paused, considering his next words carefully. Have you ever thought about writing your own songs? Me? Oh no, I wouldn't know how to begin. You already began, Billy said. Every time you sing, you're writing a song. You're choosing which words to emphasize, how to phrase the melody, what emotions to bring to the surface. Writing it down is just the next step. Emma had been listening to this exchange with growing excitement. Mama, remember the song you made up about our apartment? The one about how the walls are thin but the love is thick? Carmen laughed, but Billy could see her considering the idea seriously. That wasn't a real song, Mija. That was just silliness. All songs start as silliness, Billy said. The good ones just get polished until they sound professional. But the heart of them, the thing that makes people care, that's what you had from the beginning. The conversation was interrupted by the sound of Carmen's phone buzzing. She glanced at it, and her expression immediately shifted to worry. I'm sorry, but I need to take this, she said, answering the phone with a cautious, hello? Billy couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but he could read Carmen's face as it moved through confusion, alarm, and something that looked like relief, mixed with terror. Yes, this is Carmen Rodriguez, she said into the phone. Emma is my daughter. What? Are you sure? Tomorrow? But how did you... Yes, I understand. Thank you. Thank you so much. She ended the call and stared at the phone as if it had transformed into something magical. Mama, what is it? Emma asked, concern clear in her young voice. Carmen looked up at Billy, her expression mixing bewilderment with hope. That was Roosevelt Elementary School, Emma's principal. She said someone called in a donation to cover Emma's school lunch account for the rest of the year and also to pay for her to join the after-school music program. Billy kept his expression carefully neutral, but Emma was looking between her mother and him with growing suspicion. Mr. Bill, Emma said slowly, did you give them your phone number when we were in the store? Billy smiled. I might have asked the customer service desk for a phone book while you were picking out that thank you card. Carmen's eyes filled with tears. Mr. Joel, you've already done so much. We can't accept... Yes, you can, Billy said firmly. Because it's not charity, it's an investment. Emma is going to learn music, and someday she's going to use that music to help someone else. That's how it works. Kindness gets passed forward, one person at a time. Emma unbuckled her seatbelt and launched herself out of the car, wrapping her small arms around Billy's waist in a hug that nearly knocked him over. Thank you, Mr. Bill. Thank you for everything. Billy hugged her back, feeling 75 years of experiences crystallize into this one perfect moment. A child's gratitude freely given, a mother's dignity preserved, a chance encounter transformed into something larger than any of them had planned. You don't need to thank me, Emma. Just promise me you'll learn to play piano and sing with your mama. And remember that music is about sharing, not keeping. I promise, Emma said solemnly, stepping back but keeping one small hand on Billy's arm as if to anchor this moment in her memory. Carmen had gotten out of the car and was standing beside them, tears flowing freely now. I don't know how to repay this. Write a song about it, Billy suggested. Write a song about a mother and daughter who met a stranger in a Walmart parking lot, and how that stranger turned out to be exactly what they needed when they needed it. Write about how sometimes the universe conspires to help us, even when we don't expect it. Carmen nodded, already composing lyrics in her head. Billy could see it in her expression, the shift from recipient to creator, from someone experiencing a story to someone preparing to tell it. There's one more thing, Billy said, reaching into his wallet again. This time he pulled out a business card, not his manager's card or his publicist's, but a simple white card with his personal phone number written in his own handwriting. This is my number, he said, handing it to Carmen. I want you to call me in 6 months, both of you. I want to know how Emma is doing in music class, and I want to hear the song you write about today. And if you ever decide you want to record something, really record it in a professional studio, I know people who would be honored to work with a voice like yours." Carmen stared at the card as if it were made of gold. "You're serious. Completely serious. I've been in this business for 50 years, Mrs. Rodriguez. I know talent when I hear it. Your voice deserves to be heard by more people than just Emma and these four walls." The implications of Billy's offer hung in the humid air between them. This wasn't just about one afternoon's kindness. It was about possibilities, about doors that could open, about dreams that might actually come true with enough work and belief and support. Emma looked up at her mother with shining eyes. "Mama, this is like a fairy tale." Carmen laughed through her tears. "It really is, mija. It really is." Billy began walking back toward his own car, but Emma's voice stopped him. "Mr. Bill, when you write songs about this, will you remember to mention that I'm good at math?" Billy turned back, grinning at this child who had somehow managed to be both wise and innocent, mature and playfully young. "I'll make sure everyone knows about your math skills, Emma, and your kindness and your courage. And that Mama has the most beautiful voice in the world. Especially that," Billy promised. As he walked away, Billy could hear Carmen and Emma talking excitedly in the car, their voices mixing Spanish and English in the musical way that bilingual families navigate between languages and worlds. He found his own car, a modest sedan that he drove when he wanted to blend in, and sat behind the wheel for a moment, processing what had just happened. In the space of an hour, he had moved from buying batteries at Walmart to discovering two remarkable people who would undoubtedly change his understanding of generosity, talent, and the unexpected ways that lives intersect. Carmen's voice would stay with him for weeks, he knew, and Emma's mathematical precision in the face of crisis would remind him that courage often came in the smallest packages. But more than that, he'd been reminded of something he had known as a young musician, but had sometimes forgotten in the complexity of fame and business, that music was ultimately about connection, about finding the words and melodies that let strangers understand each other across the barriers of circumstance and experience. Billy started his car and pulled out of the parking lot, already hearing the opening chords of a new song in his head. It would be about a little girl who counted change like a banker and trusted strangers like a saint. About a mother who sang folk songs in parking lots and carried herself with the dignity of a queen. About the way that kindness could multiply exponentially when it found the right recipients. He drove slowly through the suburban streets of Massapequa, noting details he usually missed. The careful way people maintained their small lawns, the children's bicycles left trustingly on front porches, the flags and garden decorations that declared these modest homes to be sources of pride for their occupants. This was the America he had been writing about for decades, the place where ordinary people lived extraordinary lives of quiet heroism and stubborn hope. At a red light, Billy pulled out his phone and called his assistant. "Hey, it's Billy. I need you to do something for me. There's a woman named Carmen Rodriguez, probably lives somewhere near Massapequa. Her daughter Emma goes to Roosevelt Elementary. I want you to find out if Carmen has a job, and if not, I want you to connect her with that studio in Garden City, the one that's always looking for session singers and backup vocalists. Tell them I recommended her personally and that they should give her a real audition, not a courtesy meeting." His assistant, accustomed to Billy's occasional charitable impulses, took down the information without question. "Anything else?" "Yes, I want you to set up a small recording session for next month. Nothing fancy, just a good studio with a piano and quality microphones. And book it under a pseudonym. I don't want any media attention on this." "For how many people?" "2. A mother and daughter. The mother sings, the daughter might surprise us all." Billy ended the call and continued driving, his mind already working through the logistics of what he was planning. He had learned over the years that good intentions without follow-through were just another form of disappointment. and Carmen and Emma Rodriguez deserve better than empty promises. 3 weeks later, Billy found himself sitting at a Steinway grand piano in a small but well-equipped recording studio in Garden City. The room was warm and comfortable, with soft lighting and acoustic panels that created an intimate atmosphere, the kind of space where magic could happen if the right people were willing to let it. Carmen and Emma arrived exactly on time, both dressed in what were clearly their best clothes. Emma wore a navy blue dress with white trim that looked like it might have been purchased for a school concert, and Carmen had chosen a simple black dress that somehow managed to be both elegant and practical. They both carried the nervous energy of people stepping into unfamiliar territory. "Mr. Joel," Carmen said as they entered the studio, "I still can't quite believe this is happening." Billy stood and embraced them both, noting that Emma had grown taller in just 3 weeks and that Carmen looked less tired, whether from the arthritis medication or from having one less financial worry. He wasn't sure. "How has school been, Emma?" Billy asked. Emma's face lit up. "I started piano lessons. Mrs. Patterson says I have good rhythm and strong fingers, and I learned to play 'Mary Had a Little Lamb' with both hands." "That's more than some professional musicians can manage," Billy said seriously, making Emma giggle. "And how are you feeling, Mrs. Rodriguez?" Carmen flexed her hands experimentally. "Better, much better. The medicine is helping and She paused, seeming to gather courage. "I got a job, session work, mostly background vocals for commercial jingles and demo recordings. It's not much, but it's music, real music." Billy felt a surge of satisfaction. His assistant had done good work connecting Carmen with the studio, and clearly Carmen had impressed them enough to start getting regular work. "I'm so glad to hear that. Are you ready to make some music today?" They spent the first hour just talking and getting comfortable with the studio environment. Billy showed Emma how the recording equipment worked, let her experiment with different microphones, and taught her how the piano pedals affected the sound. Carmen watched it all with the attention of someone memorizing a dream. "What I'd like to do today," Billy explained, "is very simple. I want to record Carmen singing some of the songs she knows, the traditional ones, the ones her mother taught her. And if Emma wants to join in on any of them, that's wonderful too. This isn't about making a commercial recording, it's about preserving something beautiful." Carmen nodded, understanding the distinction. This wasn't about launching a career or impressing industry professionals. This was about honoring the musical heritage she had inherited and was passing down to her daughter. They started with the Sparrow song Carmen had sung in the parking lot. Billy played simple accompaniment on the piano, following Carmen's natural rhythm and phrasing rather than trying to impose any formal structure. The result was stunning, raw and authentic in a way that reminded Billy why he had fallen in love with music in the first place. Emma listened from a chair beside the piano, her young face serious with concentration. When Carmen finished the song, Emma spontaneously began humming a harmony line she had apparently been working out in her head. "Emma, that's beautiful," Billy said. "Do you want to sing it again, both of you together?" What followed was 40 minutes of the most organic music making Billy had experienced in years. Carmen would begin a song. Emma would find her own part, sometimes harmony, sometimes counterpoint, sometimes just rhythmic accompaniment. Billy's piano provided a foundation, but the real magic happened in the space between the two voices, mother and daughter finding musical conversations that spoke of years of singing together in their small apartment. They recorded lullabies and work songs, hymns and folk ballads, each one carrying stories of struggle and hope that had been passed down through generations of women who understood that music was sometimes the only wealth that couldn't be taken away. During a break, while Carmen was in the bathroom and Emma was exploring the studio's collection of percussion instruments, Billy's assistant called with an update that made him smile. "I have news about the Roosevelt Elementary Music Program," she reported. "Apparently, Emma Rodriguez is something of a phenomenon. Her music teacher says she has perfect pitch and an intuitive understanding of harmony that's extremely rare in children her age. They want to fast-track her into advanced classes. Billy wasn't surprised. Emma had demonstrated that same intuitive musicality throughout their recording session, finding vocal parts that complemented her mother's singing with the ease of someone who had been born understanding how melodies worked. When Carmen and Emma returned, Billy shared the news about Emma's musical progress. Carmen's pride was evident, but so was her concern about the practical implications. "Advanced classes probably cost more money," she said. "Actually," Billy replied, "they don't. The donation I made covers everything, including any advanced instruction Emma qualifies for. She could study music through high school if she wants to." Emma's eyes widened. "Really? I could learn to play like you?" "If you work hard and practice every day," Billy confirmed. "Talent is a gift, but skill is something you earn." They spent the remainder of the session working on an original song, the one Billy had suggested Carmen write about their meeting. She had indeed been working on it, and the lyrics she shared were simple but powerful. "In a store on Tuesday afternoon, when the world felt upside down, a stranger saw my daughter's tears and turned our lives around, not with magic, not with gold, but with kindness freely shared. He reminded us that angels walk among us everywhere." Billy helped Carmen set the words to a melody that honored both the folk tradition she came from and the contemporary world she lived in. Emma contributed a chorus that was both childlike in its simplicity and sophisticated in its emotional impact. "Sometimes help comes wearing blue jeans. Sometimes hope has weathered hands. Sometimes strangers become family when they help you understand." As they worked on the song together, Billy found himself thinking about the thousands of professional sessions he had participated in over the decades. Rooms full of talented musicians and expensive equipment, all working to create something that would sell records or win awards or advance careers. None of those sessions had felt as meaningful as this afternoon with Carmen and Emma Rodriguez, creating music for the simple reason that music needed to be created. When they finished recording, Billy made copies of everything they had done, one set for Carmen and Emma to keep, and one set that he would treasure as a reminder of what music could be when it was stripped of commercial considerations and returned to its essential purpose, human connection. As they prepared to leave the studio, Emma approached Billy with the serious expression she wore when she had something important to say. "Mr. Bill, I wrote you a song too. It's not finished, but I wanted you to hear it." She sat at the piano bench, her small fingers finding chords that Billy had taught her during their session. Her voice, still high and sweet with youth, carried a melody that was entirely her own. "Thank you for believing in a mama and her girl. Thank you for showing kindness can change the world. I'll remember what you taught me when I'm grown up like you. That music is for sharing and dreams can still come true." Billy felt tears he hadn't expected pricking at his eyes. In all his years of receiving professional accolades and industry recognition, nothing had moved him quite like this simple song from a 7-year-old who had learned to turn gratitude into melody. "Emma," he said when she finished, "that's one of the most beautiful songs I've ever heard." Carmen placed her hands on her daughter's shoulders, her own eyes shining with pride and amazement. "Where did you learn to do that, Mija?" Emma shrugged with the unconscious confidence of childhood. "Music is just talking with pretty sounds, right? And I had something important to say." As they walked out of the studio together, Billy felt a profound sense of completion. What had begun as a chance encounter in a Walmart had evolved into something that would ripple forward through time. Emma's musical education, Carmen's budding career as a session singer, and his own renewed understanding of why he had become a musician in the first place. 6 months later, Billy received a phone call that he had been eagerly anticipating. "Mr. Joel, this is Carmen Rodriguez. I promised to call you." "Carmen, how wonderful to hear from you. How are you both doing?" "We're doing well, really well. Emma is excelling in her music classes, and I've been getting steady work at the studio. But I called because I have something to tell you that I think you'll find interesting." Billy settled into his chair, prepared to hear about piano recitals and school performances. "The song we recorded together, the one about meeting you, somehow made its way to a music publisher. I'm not exactly sure how, but they want to include it in a collection of contemporary folk songs. They said it captures something authentic about modern American life." Billy smiled, though Carmen couldn't see it through the phone. He had a suspicion about how that song had reached a publisher, but he kept that information to himself. "That's wonderful news, Carmen. You deserve recognition for your talent. There's more. They want to know if you'd be interested in co-writing credit since you helped with the melody and arrangement." "Absolutely not," Billy replied immediately. "That's your song, Carmen. Yours and Emma's. I was just the piano player." Carmen laughed. "Emma said you'd say that. She knows you better than you think. How is Emma doing with her music?" She's remarkable, Mr. Joel. Her teachers are saying things like prodigy and once-in-a-generation talent. But she's still just Emma, you know. Still the same little girl who counts change carefully and writes thank you notes." "That's the best news of all," Billy said. "Talent without character is just noise, but talent with character, that's what changes the world." They talked for another 20 minutes, catching up on the small details of their lives that had been transformed by one afternoon's kindness. Carmen told him about the apartment they had moved to, still modest, but in a better neighborhood, with a piano in the community room where Emma could practice. Emma had made friends with other children in the music program and was already talking about studying composition when she got to high school. "There's one more thing," Carmen said as their conversation was winding down. "Emma wanted me to ask if you'd like to come to her spring recital. It's nothing fancy, just the elementary school music program, but she's going to perform that song she wrote for you." Billy felt that familiar warmth in his chest, the feeling that had become associated with anything connected to the Rodriguez family. "I wouldn't miss it for the world." The recital was held in Roosevelt Elementary's modest auditorium on a Tuesday evening in May. Billy arrived early and found a seat near the back, hoping to observe without becoming a distraction. The audience was filled with proud parents, grandparents, and siblings, all there to celebrate the musical achievements of their young performers. Emma appeared near the end of the program, looking both nervous and determined in a white dress that Carmen had clearly spent considerable time selecting. She sat at the school's upright piano and adjusted the bench with the precision Billy remembered from their first meeting. "Good evening," she said into the microphone, her voice clear and confident. "My name is Emma Rodriguez, and I'm going to play a song I wrote for someone who taught me that kindness is the most beautiful music of all." She began to play, her small fingers moving across the keys with a grace that suggested natural talent, refined by disciplined practice. The melody had evolved since Billy had first heard it, becoming more sophisticated while retaining its essential sweetness. But it was Emma's voice that truly captivated the audience. Still young but somehow timeless, carrying emotions that seemed far beyond her 8 years. When she finished, the applause was enthusiastic but brief, as elementary school audiences tend to be. But Billy found himself clapping longer than anyone else, moved by the realization that this child had transformed a moment of gratitude into a piece of art that would outlive all of them. After the recital, Billy made his way through the crowd to find Carmen and Emma. When Emma saw him, she broke away from a group of well-wishers and launched herself into his arms with the same enthusiasm she had shown in the Walmart parking lot 11 months earlier. "Mr. Bill, you came. Did you hear my song? Did you like how I changed the bridge?" "It was perfect," Billy assured her. "You're becoming quite the composer, Emma." Carmen approached, looking radiant in a way that had nothing to do with clothing or makeup, and everything to do with the joy of watching her daughter succeed. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Joel. It means the world to Emma, to both of us." "Thank you for including me," Billy replied. "This is exactly where I wanted to be tonight." As they stood in the elementary school auditorium, surrounded by the cheerful chaos of families celebrating their children's achievements, Billy reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought them all to this moment. A 7-year-old's tears in a retail store had led to a friendship that had enriched all their lives in ways that couldn't be measured in dollars or career achievements. Emma tugged on his sleeve, bringing his attention back to the present moment. "Mr. Bill, I have another surprise for you." She reached into a small bag her mother was carrying and pulled out a CD in a handmade case. The cover was decorated with Emma's artwork, musical notes and flowers drawn in colored pencil, with "Songs for Mr. Bill" written in her careful handwriting. "Mama and I went back to the recording studio and made this for you. It has all our favorite songs on it, plus some new ones. Mama wrote a song about her grandmother, and I wrote one about learning to play piano." Billy accepted the CD with the reverence it deserved. This wasn't just a collection of songs. It was a document of a relationship, a family's musical journey, and a testament to the power of believing in people's potential. "This is one of the most precious gifts I've ever received," he said, and meant every word. As they prepared to leave the school, Emma asked the question that had apparently been on her mind all evening. "Mr. Bill, do you think we'll still be friends when I'm grown up?" Billy knelt down so he could look directly into her eyes. Those storm-gray eyes that had first captured his attention in a discount store nearly a year ago. "Emma, I think we'll be friends for the rest of our lives. And when you're a famous musician someday, I'll tell everyone that I knew you when you were 8 years old and could already write songs that made grown-ups cry. What if I'm not famous? What if I just teach music or play in a small band or sing in church? Then I'll be just as proud of you," Billy assured her. "Fame isn't what makes music important, Emma. Love is what makes music important, and you already have more love in your music than most professionals ever find." Emma hugged him one more time, then skipped ahead to join her mother, who was gathering sheet music and flowers from well-wishers. Billy walked slowly to his car, savoring the mild spring evening and the satisfaction of a perfect end to an imperfect day. As he drove home, he found himself humming Emma's song, the simple melody that had grown out of a child's gratitude and become something larger than any of them had imagined. 2 years later, Billy received an invitation that made him smile as soon as he opened the envelope. It was hand-lettered in Emma's increasingly sophisticated handwriting. "Mr. Bill Joel is cordially invited to attend Emma Rodriguez's 10th birthday party and mini-concert, Saturday, June 15th, 2 p.m. Community Center, 245 Maple Street, Massapequa. RSVP to Carmen Rodriguez. P.S. from Emma. I learned to play Piano Man." The party was held in a modest community center room decorated with balloons and homemade banners. About 20 children were in attendance, along with their parents and a smattering of adults who clearly represented Carmen's extended chosen family. Co-workers from the recording studio, teachers from Emma's school, neighbors who had become friends. Billy arrived with a gift he had spent considerable time selecting. A child-sized keyboard that was sophisticated enough to support Emma's advancing skills, but portable enough that she could take it anywhere music called to her. Emma's reaction to the keyboard was everything Billy had hoped for. She set it up immediately and began experimenting with different sounds and rhythms, her fingers flying across the keys with the kind of joy that reminded everyone present why they had fallen in love with music in the first place. "This is amazing, Mr. Bill," Emma exclaimed. "Listen to this." She played a complex melody that incorporated elements of classical, jazz, and pop music, demonstrating that her musical education was expanding far beyond what any elementary school program could provide. The mini-concert that followed showcased not just Emma's growth as a musician, but the musical community that had formed around the Rodriguez family. Carmen sang with a confidence and polish that spoke of regular performance experience. Several of Emma's classmates joined in on percussion instruments. Even some of the parents contributed vocals to a group sing-along that transformed the community center into something approaching a folk music revival. But the highlight of the afternoon came when Emma announced her final song. "This one is special," she told the audience. "It's called The Walmart Angel, and it's about how my mom and I met our friend Mr. Bill when I was 7 years old." The song that followed was sophisticated enough to suggest that Emma had been working with professional songwriting instruction, but it retained the emotional authenticity that had marked her work from the beginning. She had learned to craft verses and choruses, to build musical tension and release, to use her voice as an instrument of storytelling rather than just melody. But more than the technical advancement, what struck Billy was the maturity of Emma's perspective on their original meeting. At 10, she understood things about kindness, dignity, and human connection that many adults never grasped. Her song wasn't just about a stranger who had helped with medicine money. It was about the moment when she learned that the world contained more good than she had previously imagined. When the party was winding down and families were beginning to gather their belongings, Carmen approached Billy with a proposition that caught him completely off guard. "Mr. Joel, I have something to discuss with you, and I hope you won't think I'm overstepping." Billy gave her his full attention, curious about what could be making Carmen look so nervous. "Emma's music teachers have been talking to me about her potential. They think she should audition for the Performing Arts High School in the city. It's an incredible opportunity, but it's also—" Carmen paused, searching for the right words. "Expensive?" Billy guessed. "Expensive, yes, but more than that. It would mean a completely different life for both of us. Emma would be commuting to Manhattan every day, studying with professional musicians, preparing for a conservatory-level education. It's the kind of opportunity I never could have imagined when I was her age." Billy could hear both excitement and terror in Carmen's voice. This was the moment every parent of a gifted child faced, the choice between the safe, known path and the leap of faith that might lead to extraordinary achievement or devastating disappointment. "What does Emma want?" Billy asked. "She wants to audition. She says she's ready for the challenge, but Mr. Joel, I don't know if I'm ready. What if I can't support her properly? What if I'm not sophisticated enough to navigate that world? What if I hold her back?" Billy understood Carmen's fears because he had lived them himself in reverse. He had grown up in a working-class family that had sacrificed to support his musical ambitions, parents who had worked extra jobs and forgone their own pleasures to pay for piano lessons and sheet music, and the thousand small expenses that added up to a musical education. "Carmen," he said gently, "you've already given Emma the most important things she'll ever need: love, values, and the understanding that music is about more than personal achievement. Everything else is just logistics." But the logistics matter too. The commute, the expenses, the social pressures of being around kids from wealthier families. Billy nodded, acknowledging the reality of Carmen's concerns. What if those logistics were less of a problem? Carmen looked at him warily. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if Emma had a scholarship that covered not just tuition but also transportation, instruments, sheet music, whatever she needs? And what if you had access to consulting about navigating the performing arts world, someone who could help you understand the opportunities and pitfalls?" Carmen's eyes widened as she processed what Billy was suggesting. "You would do that?" "Carmen, 3 years ago, you and Emma changed my understanding of what music means and why it matters. If I can help Emma reach her potential as a musician, it's not charity. It's investment in something I care about deeply." Before Carmen could respond, Emma appeared at Billy's elbow, clearly having overheard at least part of their conversation. "Mr. Bill, are you talking about helping me go to the fancy music school?" Billy looked down at this remarkable child who had somehow managed to grow up without losing any of her essential Emma-ness, still direct, still mathematically precise, still possessed of an unshakable moral compass. "I'm talking about helping you become the musician you're meant to be, Emma, whatever that takes." Emma considered this with her characteristic seriousness. "If you help me, I'll have to work really hard and practice every day, and probably give up some kid stuff to focus on music. Are you sure you want to invest in someone who might decide she likes marine biology better when she's 15? Billy laughed at the specificity of Emma's hypothetical career change. "Emma, if you decide you want to study marine biology when you're 15, I'll help you with that too. This isn't about making you into something specific. It's about giving you choices." Emma nodded solemnly, then surprised both adults by wrapping her arms around Billy's waist in one of her characteristic full-body hugs. "Okay, Mr. Bill, I accept your investment, but I'm keeping track of everything you spend, and someday I'm going to pay you back with interest." 5 years later, Billy found himself sitting in the audience of Lincoln Center, watching 15-year-old Emma Rodriguez perform a piece she had composed herself as part of her junior recital at the Manhattan School of Music's pre-college program. The girl on stage bore little resemblance to the crying child in Walmart 8 years earlier, but her essential character remained unchanged. Emma had grown tall and graceful, her stage presence commanding attention without demanding it. She wore a simple black dress that Carmen had helped her choose, and her dark hair was pulled back in a style that was both professional and age-appropriate. But when she smiled at the audience before beginning her piece, Billy could still see traces of the 7-year-old who had counted change with mathematical precision. The composition Emma performed was titled Variations on Kindness, a complex piece that incorporated musical themes from their original recording session, melodies from Carmen's traditional songs, and Emma's own sophisticated harmonic language. It was clearly the work of someone who understood both the technical demands of serious music and the emotional requirements of meaningful art. Carmen sat beside Billy in the darkened concert hall, tears streaming down her face as she watched her daughter perform. Over the years, Carmen had blossomed as well. Regular session work had led to occasional solo performances, and she had developed a reputation in New York's music community as someone who brought authenticity and emotional depth to everything she sang. "I still can't believe this is our life," Carmen whispered to Billy during the applause that followed Emma's performance. "Believe it," Billy replied. "You both earned this." After the recital, they joined Emma backstage for the informal reception that allowed family and friends to congratulate the young performers. Emma was surrounded by classmates, teachers, and other musicians, all eager to discuss her composition and her plans for college auditions the following year. When she finally broke away from the crowd and made her way to Billy and Carmen, Emma carried herself with the confidence of someone who had found her place in the world but hadn't forgotten where she came from. "So," she said, grinning at Billy, "what did you think of my variations on your investment?" Billy hugged her carefully, mindful of her performance dress and the exhaustion that always followed a successful concert. "I think you just proved that some investments pay dividends that can't be measured in money." "Good, because I calculated the actual monetary return on your investment in my education, and it's going to take me approximately forever to pay you back at current interest rates." Billy laughed. At 15, Emma had retained her love of mathematical precision while developing the kind of sophisticated humor that came from years of studying with older, more experienced musicians. "Emma," he said, "you paid me back the first time you played Piano Man at your 10th birthday party. Everything since then has been pure profit." As they prepared to leave Lincoln Center, walking out into the New York night that glittered with possibilities, Billy reflected on the unexpected trajectory that had brought them all to this moment. What had begun as $17.18 in a Walmart had somehow evolved into a Lincoln Center performance, a family's transformation, and a friendship that had enriched all their lives in ways that couldn't be quantified or reduced to simple cause and effect. Emma walked between Billy and Carmen as they headed toward the subway, already chattering about her college audition plans and her ideas for her senior composition project. She had grown into exactly the kind of person Billy had hoped she would become, talented but grounded, ambitious but kind, successful but never forgetting the values that had shaped her. "Mr. Bill," Emma said as they descended into the subway station, "I have a question for you." "What's that?" "Do you think there are other kids out there like I was, kids who need help but don't know how to ask for it?" Billy considered the question seriously. "I'm sure there are, Emma." "Why?" "Because I've been thinking about starting a foundation, something that helps families like mine, families where the kids have talent but the parents are working so hard just to survive that music seems like a luxury they can't afford." Carmen looked at her daughter with surprise and pride. "Mija, that's a beautiful idea. But foundations require a lot of work and money and—" "I know," Emma interrupted. "That's why I want to start planning now, while I'm still in school and have time to figure out how to do it right. And I was thinking that maybe Mr. Bill might want to help me set it up, since he has experience with this kind of thing." Billy felt that familiar warmth in his chest, the feeling that had become his emotional response to Emma's ability to surprise him with her maturity and vision. "Emma, I think that might be the best idea you've ever had. And yes, I would be honored to help you make it happen." As their subway train pulled into the station, Billy found himself thinking about the circular nature of kindness, the way that help freely given had a tendency to multiply and return in unexpected forms. The 7-year-old, who had once needed help buying her mother's medicine, was now 15 and planning to help other children access the kind of opportunities that had transformed her own life. 10 years after that first meeting in Walmart, Billy received an invitation that represented the culmination of everything he had hoped for when he first decided to help Carmen and Emma Rodriguez. The invitation was elegantly printed on heavy paper, with Emma's name embossed in gold lettering. "Emma Rodriguez requests the honor of your presence at her debut performance with the New York Philharmonic, performing her original composition, American Stories, a symphony in 3 movements. Saturday, October 15th, 8:00 p.m., David Geffen Hall, Lincoln Center." Billy arrived at the concert hall early, wanting to savor the full experience of watching Emma achieve this milestone. At 25, she had already established herself as one of the most promising young composers of her generation, with commissions from major orchestras and a growing reputation for music that bridged the gap between classical sophistication and popular accessibility. The program notes described Emma's symphony as a work that explores the intersection of individual dreams and collective experience in contemporary America, drawing on musical traditions from folk song to jazz to create a uniquely personal yet universally resonant musical narrative. Billy smiled as he read the description, recognizing Emma's voice in the formal language. She had always understood that her personal story was also a larger American story, the story of families who worked hard and supported each other, of children who were given chances to exceed their circumstances, of communities that came together to nurture talent and hope. Carmen appeared at Billy's side just as the house lights were dimming, looking elegant in a navy blue dress that Billy suspected Emma had helped her choose. "Can you believe this is happening?" Carmen whispered as they took their seats. "After everything I've seen Emma accomplish, I can believe anything," Billy replied. The symphony that followed was magnificent, complex enough to satisfy serious classical music lovers, but emotionally accessible in a way that reminded Billy of the best popular music. Emma had learned to write music that was both intellectually challenging and deeply felt. Pieces that rewarded careful listening while never losing sight of their primary obligation to move the human heart. The first movement explored themes of departure and arrival, musical motifs that suggested both loss and possibility. Billy could hear echoes of Carmen's traditional songs woven into the orchestral fabric, transformed but recognizable. The second movement was more playful, incorporating jazz rhythms and popular music harmonies in a way that felt like a celebration of American musical diversity. But it was the third movement that brought tears to Billy's eyes. a powerful meditation on hope and resilience that built to a climax of breathtaking beauty before resolving into a quiet coda that seemed to whisper of infinite possibilities. The audience response was immediate and overwhelming. The standing ovation lasted for nearly 10 minutes, with Emma appearing on stage multiple times to acknowledge the applause. When she finally gestured for Carmen and Billy to join her on stage, the applause grew even louder. Standing on the Lincoln Center stage beside Carmen and Emma, Billy felt a profound sense of completion and continuation. What had begun as a simple act of kindness had evolved into something far more significant, a demonstration of what was possible when people believed in each other and acted on that belief. Emma stepped to the microphone for a brief speech, her voice carrying clearly through the concert hall. This symphony is dedicated to everyone who has ever helped a stranger, everyone who has ever seen potential in a child and chosen to nurture it, and everyone who believes that art has the power to make the world more beautiful. But most especially, it's dedicated to my mother, Carmen Rodriguez, who taught me that music is about love, and to Bill Joel, who taught me that kindness is the most important music of all. As the applause swelled around them, Billy found himself thinking about the unpredictable nature of human connection, the way that lives could intersect at the most ordinary moments and create ripples that lasted for decades. A crying child in a discount store had led to this moment on one of the world's most prestigious stages, proof that small acts of kindness could have consequences far beyond anything their authors could imagine. After the concert, at the reception hosted by the Philharmonic, Billy found himself in conversation with Emma about her future plans. At 25, she was already being courted by major symphony orchestras, conservatories, and recording labels. But Emma, being Emma, she had her own ideas about how to use her success. "The foundation is really taking off," she reported. "We've helped 43 families so far, and we're expanding to include not just music education, but all kinds of arts training. I met a kid last month who reminds me so much of myself at 7, brilliant, determined, and completely convinced that her dreams are impossible." "What did you tell her?" Billy asked. Emma grinned. "I told her about a little girl who met a stranger in Walmart, and how that stranger turned out to be exactly what she needed when she needed it most. I told her that the world is full of people who are waiting to help, if you're brave enough to let them." Billy felt that familiar stirring in his chest, the recognition that Emma had learned the most important lesson he could have taught her, that receiving help gracefully was just as important as giving it, and that the true measure of success wasn't what you achieved, but what you made possible for others. "There's something else," Emma continued. "I've been working on a project that I think you'll find interesting. I'm writing a musical, a full Broadway-style production about ordinary people who do extraordinary things. It's called Walmart Angels, and it's loosely based on our story." Billy raised an eyebrows. "A musical about us?" "Not exactly about us," Emma clarified. "About the idea of us. About what happens when people choose to see each other's humanity instead of their circumstances. The specific details are different, but the themes are the same. Kindness, dignity, the power of believing in people's potential." Billy considered this development with interest and slight trepidation. His life had been the subject of enough public attention over the years that he was wary of projects that might exploit or oversimplify his experiences. Emma seemed to read his concerns in his expression. "Don't worry, Mr. Bill. I'm not writing Billy Joel the celebrity into the story. I'm writing about the kind of person who stops to help a crying child in a store, regardless of who they are or what they're famous for. The story is about the helpers, not the helped." Over the following months, Billy watched Emma's musical take shape with fascination and pride. She had learned to dramatize the themes that had defined their relationship without reducing them to simple sentimentality. The show explored the complexity of modern American life, the intersection of art and commerce, the way that talent could emerge from unexpected places if given proper support. But more than that, Emma had created a work of art that celebrated the kind of quiet heroism that most people displayed every day without recognition or reward. Her musical was populated with characters who worked multiple jobs to support their families, who sacrificed their own dreams to nurture their children's potential, who found ways to help each other despite having limited resources themselves. When Walmart Angels opened off-Broadway 18 months later, Billy was in the audience for the first performance, sitting beside Carmen and watching Emma's vision come to life on stage. The show was both entertaining and deeply moving, managing to address serious social issues while never losing its essential optimism about human nature. The critics praised Emma's sophisticated score and her nuanced understanding of working-class American life. But for Billy, the real success of the musical was evident in the audience response. People laughed and cried and left the theater talking about kindness, generosity,